I'd have to say. I mean, it's a little bittersweet knowing that some of these places I'll never go back to and play again. I've been doing them for over 30 years.
Everyone knows George Strait as the king of country music, a legend with over 70 million records sold and an unmatched streak of #1 hits. But here's the part almost nobody talks about: the story behind his son. George Strait Jr., better known as Bubba, didn't just step away from fame. He walked through heartbreak that would have broken most people and still built a life on his own terms. This is a deeply personal journey filled with loss, quiet strength, and choices that will genuinely surprise you. And trust this, the deeper this goes, the more unexpected it becomes. The tragedy that changed everything. June 25, 1986 did not arrive with any warning signs, yet that date carved a permanent mark into the life of George Strait and family. Late-night air in San Marcos carried a quiet calm, the kind that often makes everything feel safe, almost too safe. Around 11:55 p.m., a Ford Mustang moved through familiar roads carrying 4 young people, laughter likely filling the space, nothing suggesting that a single turn would change everything. Then came a sharp turn onto a side road, sudden and misjudged. Tires lost grip, metal lost control. In seconds, the car skidded, flipped, and landed upside down in a ditch. Silence replaced whatever sound had been there before. How does something so ordinary turn so final in a heartbeat? Inside that car sat Jennifer Strait, just a teenager, positioned in the front passenger seat with the window open. No seat belts secured anyone inside. During the violent rollover, Jennifer was partially thrown out. Impact came fast and unforgiving. Death occurred instantly at the scene. No time for goodbyes. No chance for anything to be said or undone. Meanwhile, the driver, Gregory Wilson Allen, only 18, walked away without injury. 2 other passengers, William Allen McDonald, 16, and Joseph Wiley Robbins, 17, sustained only minor injuries and later received treatment at a local hospital. The contrast alone raises questions that never seem to settle. Why does one life end, while others continue almost untouched? Authorities later confirmed what caused the crash. Excessive speed played the central role. No alcohol involvement. Just speed, a decision made in a moment, leading to consequences that would stretch across decades. Allen faced a Class A misdemeanor charge for vehicular homicide and received release on a $2,000 personal recognizance bond. Legal processes moved forward as expected, yet legal language often feels small when placed beside such a loss. Can any charge or courtroom outcome ever balance something like that? A funeral followed at First United Methodist Church in San Marcos. Family, friends, and community gathered, each person carrying a version of grief that words rarely capture properly. Burial took place in Pearsall. Ceremonies often bring structure to loss, yet structure does not erase absence. After the crowd leaves and the quiet returns, reality settles in a different way. Life continues, but never in the same shape again. In the years that followed, George Strait made a decision that spoke louder than any public statement. Interviews stopped. Public conversations about the tragedy ended almost completely. In a rare 2017 interview with The New Yorker, an explanation surfaced in simple, direct words, saying that talking about the loss never felt right, so silence became the answer. That kind of silence often says more than any detailed explanation ever could. What does constant retelling do to a wound that never fully closes? Even with that silence, music did not stop. Performances continued. Records kept coming. Between 1986 and 1989, 11 consecutive #1 hits appeared, an achievement that speaks to both dedication and endurance. On the surface, success seemed steady, even unstoppable. Underneath, grief moved quietly alongside every note. How does a person step onto a stage, face thousands, and still carry something so heavy inside? Music became more than just a career during that period. Music turned into a place where emotions could exist without direct explanation. Songs like Baby Blue and You'll Be There have often been linked by listeners to that loss. No official confirmation needed for many who hear something deeper in the lyrics. Sometimes meaning finds its way into art without needing to be spelled out. Is that not how many people process pain, by placing pieces of feeling into something creative rather than speaking directly? In 1987, a different kind of response to grief took shape. The Jennifer Strait Memorial Foundation was created, supported by private donations from friends and fans. The foundation directs earnings toward children's charities in the San Antonio area. That effort turned memory into action, transforming loss into something that could still bring light to others. Many people search for ways to keep a loved one present in some form. What better way than helping others in that name? Grief often changes direction over time. Early days carry shock and disbelief. Later years carry reflection and quiet understanding. The foundation stands as a reminder that something lasting can grow even from deep pain. Not a replacement, never a replacement, but a continuation of impact. That kind of legacy speaks in actions rather than words. Within the family, another life felt the shift in a different but equally powerful way. George Strait Jr., known as Bubba, was only 5 years old at the time. At that age, life usually feels simple, protected, guided by older siblings and parents. Jennifer had been described as a second mother figure, offering care, attention, and a sense of safety. That presence disappeared overnight. Childhood changed direction instantly. How does a young child process something that even adults struggle to understand? Growing up after such a loss often brings a unique kind of awareness. Early exposure to grief can shape personality in lasting ways. Many describe a quieter outlook, a deeper sense of perspective, a grounded way of seeing life. Bubba grew into a private individual, someone who stayed away from the spotlight despite being connected to one of the most recognized names in country music. Perhaps that choice reflects a desire for normalcy, or maybe a natural response to early experiences with loss. When life shows how fragile everything can be, priorities tend to shift. Family bonds also change after something like this. Loss can either pull people apart or draw them closer together. In this case, a sense of protection and closeness remained strong. Even without constant public discussion, the influence of that event stayed present in quiet ways. Sometimes the most important changes are the ones that are not spoken about openly. Looking back, the accident itself lasted only seconds. The impact of that moment continues decades later. A single decision involving speed led to a chain of events that reshaped multiple lives. That reality often leads to reflection about how quickly circumstances can change. Ordinary moments carry more weight when seen through that lens. A simple car ride, a routine night, a familiar road. Nothing unusual at first glance. Then everything changes. Questions tend to linger long after events like this. Could anything have been different with a slower speed? Would seatbelts have changed the outcome? Why do some survive while others do not? Answers rarely bring full comfort. Still, such questions remain part of how people try to make sense of what happened. Through silence, Ipamisan, through music and through charitable work, a path forward formed. Not an easy path, not a straight one, but a path shaped by resilience. Public life continued, but private grief stayed protected. That balance became part of how life moved forward. Even today, the mention of that date carries weight. June 25, 1986, is not just a point in time. That date represents a moment where everything shifted, where a family experienced a loss that no words can fully capture. Yet within that loss, signs of strength, remembrance, and quiet perseverance continue to appear. Life after such an event never returns to what existed before. Instead, a new version of life takes shape, one that carries both memory and meaning. That is often how people continue, by holding on to what mattered while still finding ways to move forward. Bubba Strait's career path and personal choices. Choosing ranching over music sounded surprising at first, especially with a last name tied so closely to George Strait. Still, early life choices painted a different picture. Time at Texas A&M University and College Station leaned heavily toward rodeo culture. Interest in team roping grew stronger with each passing season. Rodeo arenas replaced recording studios, and dusty practice fields became daily routine. A clear path formed around cattle, horses, and competition. Professional rodeo life followed graduation, with entry into the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. Team roping required sharp timing and trust between partners, so countless hours went into practice. One notable moment came during the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo in 2006. Competition took place before a massive crowd, right before a major performance. Pride filled the arena as a father watched a son compete. Reported remarks described that moment as one of the greatest feelings imaginable. How often does a parent witness such a direct continuation of shared passion? Ranch life remained central throughout this journey. Land near Pearsall carried deep family roots, while another property near Cotulla expanded daily ranching work. Life revolved around early mornings, livestock care, and long hours outdoors. Conversations often circled back to buckle wins and rodeo goals. Winning together became a dream that symbolized more than trophies. Could any stage performance match that kind of connection? Around 2005, focus sharpened on mastering the roping circuit. Dedication to improvement became clear through constant travel and practice, all aimed at reaching the National Finals Rodeo. Progress required patience, discipline, and resilience. Rodeo success never came easy, so each small improvement carried weight. A question naturally followed. Would long-term life stay rooted in rodeo arenas, or would another path quietly open? Eventually, a shift began to take shape. Retirement from professional roping did not mean stepping away from creativity. Instead, energy moved towards songwriting. Work behind the scenes in country music started gaining attention, particularly through collaboration on the album Twang. Several tracks carried co-writing credits, including Living for the Night, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and He's Got That Something Special. One track, Arkansas Dave, stood out with a solo writing credit. Living for the Night, written alongside Dean Dillon, marked a special milestone. Reported comments highlighted that release as the first single co-written by a father within a long and successful career. Chart success followed, climbing high on the Hot Country Songs rankings. Such a moment raised an interesting thought. Did songwriting create a deeper bond than performing separately ever could? Creative partnership continued on the album Here for a Good Time, where multiple songs came together through collaboration with Dean Dillon. Reported reflections described this period as a renewal of passion for songwriting. Working side by side brought fresh energy into a career already filled with milestones. A simple idea stood out clearly. Shared creativity often strengthens family ties in ways competition alone cannot. Outside music and rodeo, personal life added another layer to this journey. A meeting at a San Antonio Spurs game in 2005 introduced Tamara Shipman. Performance as a silver dancer created a memorable first encounter. Engagement followed in 2010, leading to marriage later that same year. Life moved forward with the arrival of children, including George Harvey Strait III, often called Harvey, in 2012, and Jillian Louise Strait in 2016. Career paths within the family continued to evolve. Work as a realtor with Strait Luxury kept daily life grounded in business and community. Support for causes such as Methodist Hospital Children's Center reflected a commitment beyond personal success. Looking at this journey, a pattern becomes clear. Early choices leaned toward ranching and rodeo, shaped by tradition and environment. Later decisions opened doors in music, not through performance alone, but through writing and collaboration. Each phase carried purpose and growth. A lingering question remains worth asking. Did stepping away from the spotlight actually create a stronger and more meaningful legacy? The father-son bond and life today. George Strait's later years in music carried a quiet shift, one shaped not by charts or spotlight, but by family influence. Conversations around songwriting began to take a different tone when Bubba stepped in, not as a replacement for past collaborators, but as a fresh voice with a familiar connection. George reportedly shared that Bubba's involvement brought unexpected energy back into a space that once felt routine. A renewed sense of purpose surfaced, almost like rediscovering an old road with new scenery. Was that not something rare after decades in the industry? Bubba did not begin with loud ambition in music. Early interests leaned elsewhere, far from stages and studios. Yet over time, songwriting became a shared language between father and son. George expressed gratitude for that shift, describing collaboration as a blessing that arrived at just the right moment. Creative sessions turned into more than work. Each lyric carried meaning beyond sound, reflecting lived experiences, family values, and a deep understanding that only close relationships could produce. One unforgettable moment came during a final tour stop in 2014. A packed venue, a career stretching across decades, and a sense of closure filled the air. Then came Arkansas Dave, performed as a duet between George and Bubba. That performance stood as more than entertainment. A passing of something intangible seemed to take place right there on stage. Not a farewell to music itself, but a transition into a different chapter. A question lingered in the atmosphere. Could any ending feel more complete than sharing such a moment with family? That same night marked the end of large-scale touring for George. Cameras captured every note for a CMT concert special, preserving a milestone that fans would revisit for years. Retirement from touring did not signal silence. Instead, focus shifted inward toward songwriting, family time, and meaningful collaborations. Music remained present, just without constant travel and public demands. A slower pace allowed deeper reflection. Did that not seem like a natural evolution after years of relentless schedules? Family legacy continued to unfold in subtle but powerful ways. In 2019, a new generation stepped onto a familiar stage. Young Harvey joined George at the Houston Rodeo, creating another moment that blended past, present, and future. No pressure, no forced path, just a shared experience rooted in tradition. That appearance spoke volumes without needing explanation. Musical heritage within the Strait family did not rely on obligation. Instead, connection grew through moments like these, where participation came naturally. Observers often noted how such multi-generational performances felt genuine rather than planned. Each appearance carried a sense of ease, as though music simply belonged in everyday life. No rigid expectations shaped these moments. A quiet understanding guided everything. Could any legacy feel stronger than one built on choice rather than pressure? George spoke openly about pride in Bubba's development as a songwriter. A 2015 interview with USA Today highlighted that sentiment. Early disinterest in the music business made Bubba's later growth even more meaningful. Watching that transformation unfold created a deeper appreciation for both talent and perseverance. Songwriting sessions became spaces for connection, where ideas flowed freely and respect moved in both directions. Such collaboration went beyond typical father-son dynamics. Roles blurred in a positive way. George brought experience, while Bubba introduced fresh perspectives. Together, a balance formed. Creative disagreements likely happened, yet mutual respect kept everything grounded. That kind of partnership raised an interesting thought. How often does family collaboration reach that level without strain? Outside of music, Bubba chose a life far removed from public attention. No social media presence, no constant updates, no desire for visibility. In an age where sharing every moment has become common, that decision stood out. Privacy became a priority, allowing space for genuine living without outside noise. Tamara, Bubba's wife, occasionally shared glimpses through Instagram, offering rare snapshots of family life. Each post felt intentional, not excessive. Home base remained in the San Antonio area, close to George and Norma. Proximity allowed strong family bonds to continue without interruption. Gatherings, shared time, and everyday interactions took precedence over public appearances. That choice reflected values established long ago. Simplicity, faith, and family stood at the center of everything. George and Norma built a foundation rooted in those principles decades earlier. Fame never replaced core beliefs. Instead, success existed alongside a grounded lifestyle. Bubba's path mirrored that example. A life focused on personal fulfillment rather than celebrity status created stability. Could any career achievement compare to that kind of balance? Daily life for Bubba revolved around family responsibilities and personal interests. Songwriting remained part of that rhythm, though not always in a public way. Creative work continued quietly, without constant promotion. That approach allowed authenticity to remain intact. No pressure to meet expectations, no need to chase trends, just honest expression. Meanwhile, George maintained a presence in music through selective projects. Occasional performances, new songs, and collaborations kept the connection alive. Retirement from touring did not mean stepping away entirely. Instead, engagement became more intentional. Each appearance carried weight. Each release felt purposeful. Fans recognized that shift, often appreciating the depth that came with it. Looking at the bigger picture, the Strait family story highlighted something often overlooked in entertainment circles. Legacy did not rely solely on fame or recognition. Instead, legacy grew through relationships, shared values, and meaningful experiences. Music served as a bridge, connecting generations without forcing direction. Moments like the 2014 duet and the 2019 rodeo appearance illustrated that idea clearly. Each instance showed continuity without pressure. Participation came from genuine interest, rather than obligation. That approach created a sense of freedom within tradition. A rare balance, yet one that seemed to define the Strait family. Questions naturally arise when observing such dynamics. How many families manage to blend professional success with personal harmony in that way? What allows creative partnerships to thrive without conflict overshadowing connection? Perhaps the answer lies in respect, patience, and a shared understanding of priorities. George's reflections on working with Bubba often return to gratitude, not just for talent, but for the opportunity to share that journey. Late career collaboration added a layer of meaning that early success could not provide. Experience met fresh perspective, creating something unique. That combination enriched both music and relationship. At the same time, Bubba's choice to remain private reinforced a different kind of strength. Visibility was never the goal. Fulfillment came from within, shaped by family, faith, and personal growth. In a world driven by attention, that decision spoke volumes. Life in Texas continued at a steady pace, far from the intensity of constant touring. Familiar surroundings, close-knit relationships, and a sense of calm defined daily living. That environment allowed creativity to flourish without pressure. Space to think, space to write, space to live fully. George's career, already legendary, found a new layer through family involvement. Bubba's contributions added depth to later works, creating songs that carried personal significance. Each lyric reflected shared experiences, making music feel more intimate. Listeners often sensed that authenticity, even without knowing the full story behind each song. Meanwhile, Harvey's brief stage moment hinted at possibilities for the future. No guarantees, no expectations, just a glimpse of continuity. That moment alone carried enough meaning. Whether future involvement grows or remains occasional, the foundation remains strong. In the end, the Strait family journey offers a quiet lesson. Success does not always need expansion. Sometimes success deepens through connection, reflection, and shared moments. Music becomes more than performance. Music becomes memory, tradition, and expression passed through generations. George once found renewed inspiration through Bubba's influence. Bubba found purpose without seeking the spotlight. Harvey stepped into a moment that connected past and future. Each piece fits into a larger picture, one defined not by noise, but by meaning. And perhaps that raises one final thought. When legacy builds through genuine connection rather than expectation, does any external validation even matter? George Strait Jr.'s early life and family background. Growing up around fame sounds exciting at first, but life inside such a home often follows a very different rhythm. George Strait Jr. entered life on May 14, 1981, into a household already shaped by the rising success of George Strait. At that point, country music had already started to open doors, yet family life remained deeply tied to Texas values. A simple question naturally comes up here. What happens when a child grows up hearing hit songs in the background but still eats dinner like any other family in a quiet town? San Marcos, Texas became that grounding space. While Nashville carried the noise of recording studios and industry pressure, home stayed calm and familiar. That choice said a lot. Many would assume relocation closer to fame would make life easier, but the opposite path felt more important. Stability came first. Growing up in that environment meant exposure to music without being consumed by the spotlight. Rodeos, open land, and everyday routines shaped daily life far more than flashing cameras ever did. That balance created a unique upbringing, one where fame existed but never dominated. Family structure added another layer to that experience. Parents built a household that valued privacy above attention. Conversations stayed within walls, and connections felt genuine instead of performative. That kind of environment raises another interesting thought. How often does a family connected to major fame successfully keep life feeling ordinary? In this case, effort and intention made that possible. An older sister, Jennifer Strait, played a central role in shaping early years. Born in 1972, nearly a decade before Bubba, age difference created a dynamic that felt closer to guidance than rivalry. Instead of competition, a sense of responsibility developed. Observers often described a protective presence that stood out immediately. Statements later shared by family described constant watchfulness, a kind of quiet assurance that nothing harmful would get close. That kind of sibling bond invites reflection. What makes an older sibling step into such a strong protective role? Personality likely played a part, but family values clearly reinforced that behavior. Care, loyalty, and attention became everyday habits rather than rare moments. Small gestures built trust over time. Walking together, sharing stories, stepping in during difficult moments. All of that added up to something deeper than a typical sibling connection. Arguments still happened, of course. Any close relationship carries moments of disagreement. Yet those disagreements never seemed to leave lasting damage. Family accounts described a pattern where tension would rise, then settle quickly, often ending with reassurance and closeness. That balance between conflict and care created emotional strength. Growing up in such an environment teaches resilience without removing warmth. Meanwhile, the presence of a globally recognized music career continued to grow in the background. George Strait became one of the defining voices in country music, yet home life remained steady. That contrast shaped perspective. Fame became something to observe rather than chase. Exposure did not automatically translate into pressure. Instead, independence quietly formed. Education played a role in that independence. Time at Texas A&M University opened new paths and interests. College life often marks a turning point, especially for someone raised around a famous parent. A natural question comes up again. Would a path identical to a parent feel inevitable, or would a different direction feel more appealing? In this case, exploration seemed more important than imitation. Interests outside music began to take shape. While songwriting and performance existed within reach, other passions slowly gained attention. Exposure to ranch life, business, and agriculture added variety to personal development. That mix of influences created a broader identity. Instead of being defined by one legacy, multiple possibilities remained open. Still, the emotional core of early life always circled back to family. Strong bonds formed during childhood often carry into adulthood, shaping decisions and reactions in subtle ways. The connection with Jennifer Strait stood at the center of that foundation. Descriptions of that relationship often highlighted warmth, patience, and consistency. A sense of safety remained constant, even during uncertain moments. Such a bond naturally leads to another thought. What happens when a person who provides that level of emotional support is suddenly no longer present? The idea alone feels heavy. For anyone raised with that kind of closeness, absence would leave a noticeable gap. Memories would carry weight, and lessons learned during those early years would take on deeper meaning. Before any tragedy entered the picture, however, daily life remained simple in many ways. School, family gatherings, outdoor activities, and occasional glimpses into the music world filled those years. Fame existed like a distant sound, always there, but never overwhelming. That balance allowed childhood to feel real rather than staged. Parents continued reinforcing values that prioritized humility and connection. Success never replaced kindness. Recognition never replaced responsibility. That approach shaped behavior in quiet but lasting ways. People who encountered the family often described a sense of authenticity that felt rare in the entertainment world. Looking at that upbringing, one detail stands out clearly. Intentional choices created that environment. Living away from major industry centers, maintaining privacy, and focusing on relationships required effort. Without those decisions, life could have taken a very different direction. Would growing up in the center of constant attention have changed personality, priorities, or identity? That question lingers, even without a clear answer. The presence of music still influenced daily life, though not in an overwhelming way. Songs played in the background, rehearsals happened, and tours occasionally pulled attention away. Yet home always remained the anchor. That consistency gave space for personal growth without pressure. Over time, early experiences built a strong internal foundation. Confidence, independence, and emotional awareness often come from stable environments. In this case, family bonds provided that stability. Lessons learned during childhood continued shaping decisions later in life. The connection between siblings remained one of the most defining elements of that period. Shared experiences created memories that lasted far beyond those early years. Laughter, arguments, support, and protection all blended into something meaningful. That relationship demonstrated how family can shape identity in ways that extend far beyond childhood. Even with the presence of fame, the heart of that upbringing stayed simple. A home in Texas, strong family values, and close relationships created a sense of normalcy that many might not expect in such circumstances. That contrast made the experience unique. In the end, growing up in that environment offered both opportunity and grounding. Exposure to a major music career opened doors, while family values ensured stability. The influence of an older sibling added emotional depth, creating a support system that felt constant and reliable. And looking at all of this together, one question quietly remains. Does growing up around fame shape a person more through what is present or through what is intentionally kept away? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.